Okay, we are live. Hello, I'm Howard Mann, creator of Conscious Shifting, and welcome to Conscious Shifting. Before we get started, a quick warning and disclaimer. Conscious shifting and all known side effects will improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while creating the ideal environment for spiritual awakening, helping you live the life of your dreams and influence the world in a positive way. So, if that's something that interests you, become part of our tribe by following this page or subscribing on YouTube. And then join us here Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. California time for Conscious Shifting. There's so many of you that we simply cannot personally communicate with all of you. So the way to communicate with us is through our daily thought-provoking posts or our weekly live. If you have a question, there are likely thousands of others with the same question. Simply place your question in the comment box and we will reply by answering your question from a spiritual perspective. This will benefit everyone. All right, with that, let's see who we have in here. And so far, I see Kim and Cheryl. Love, laugh, and be happy in the house. All right, so this week, that's everybody. Let's get relaxed. Everybody take a deep breath, way down to the lower energy center, and then relax. Thank you, Cheryl. And a big deep breath. And relax. And one more time, big deep breath. And relax. All right. Always good to relax. Take a little time out from the world. So tonight, speaking of the world, tonight the topic is egotistical world consciousness and 3 things you can do about it. So I'm sure that you've noticed that there's a lot wrong with what's going on in the world. You don't have to look very hard, do you? Do you ever wonder why? Hi, Kathy. How you doing? Hi, Susan. People often ask, why does God allow evil? Why does God allow pain? Why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow disease? Why does God allow harm to children? These types of questions people often wonder, and it troubles them deeply. But the thing is that people personalize God by projecting their egotism onto God as if God was created in their image, reducing God to their superego. So, in some convoluted way, this makes sense to them. They credit God with being the creator of all of this, and therefore all of the problems as well. And then, in a similar way, they see God as an interventionalist, expecting God to fix everything. It would be wise to consider, however, that if not for free will, we would be nothing more than human robots, which would, of course, make all of this pointless. In other words, if we had no choice, there wouldn't be any value in what we choose. And that would make God and all of creation rather ridiculous, wouldn't it? Hi, Tracy. So instead, the world is a projection of our beliefs. Consciously and subconsciously, we collectively create this reality. Everything from the known universe to the 100 trillion cells that make up each one of our physical bodies. The point being that if we didn't have something inside of us, then we wouldn't be able to project it outward, and collectively we wouldn't be creating this reality. And like it or not, we all play a part. Or that is to say, at least our egos play a part. Conversely, the consciousness of God is far above that. Know that things are often not as they seem, but always as they should be. The higher reality is that everything is exactly as it should be. Since this world is a creation of collective consciousness, and at this time, the collective consciousness of the world is predominantly ego based, then it's really no surprise that this world is a world of ego's creation. An ego without the influence of spiritual consciousness is primarily a collection of negative emotions based upon predatory gain. That's the game that we play here. Therefore, ego's rejection of God and ego's projection onto God is responsible for the problems with our reality. Hi Anna, how you doing? Indeed, what you see is messy. It's low-level consciousness trying to transcend into higher states of consciousness. And it's happening on many different levels, all at the same time. And as people evolve spiritually, they will transcend into higher states of consciousness. Then these things will start to fade away. They're not going to fade away easily. They're not going to fade away quickly, nor will they fade away because of presidents, dictators, or court rulings. As people transcend into higher states of consciousness, their thoughts and actions will transcend into higher thoughts and actions, leaving egotistical things like governments, along with their laws, unnecessary. But for now, it's a huge mess, and it's going to get worse. It's messy right now because the primary level of world consciousness is ego. And it's going to get worse because most people haven't even started the process of rising into higher states of consciousness. Furthermore, many who think they are spiritually conscious are not. And then there's those egomaniacs with a God complex. So, yes, it's going to get much worse because the bigger the ego, the bigger the fall before the rise. So, what can you do about it? That's the gist, right? One thing is to learn to recognize ego, to avoid being sucked into identification with ego, learn to recognize the limited consciousness of ego. We're constantly bombarded with egotistical brainwashing, some of which has been handed down for thousands of years. Humans deceive and are deceived for a variety of reasons. For example, that's right, on a rise, the humans deceive and are deceived for a variety of reasons. Three of them, for example, are perceived inability to handle the truth, perceived inability to understand the truth, or sparing another's feelings. But actually, when you get right down to it, there's only one underlying reason: people lie. People lie because they're afraid if you knew the truth, you wouldn't participate in their lies. That's a classic identification with ego. Rise our consciousness. Exactly. Now, spirit, on the other hand, only knows truth. So the better you get at identifying with spirit, the better you'll get at spotting falsehoods because they will insult your soul. And when something insults your soul, pay attention because there's something horribly wrong. Fear, Kim says. Yes. To begin with, you can understand spiritual unconsciousness as the reason for deception. And spiritual unconsciousness on a worldwide scale as the reason for the consensus on deception. It's simply because a lot of people agree and there's this consensus of even a majority doesn't make it right, does it? Just means that it's popular. Rise and shine and give God the glory. There you go. So when you're trying to discern information, I mean, we're another thing we're always bombarded with is information. So when you're trying to understand whether information is based in higher or lower consciousness, look at the fruit that the tree bears. The tree bears. Look at the fruit that the tree bears. And I could go off on that one for a while. Love or fear. That's easy to discern, right? Is what's coming through the energy behind the words, the message, the result of the information, if it's implemented, is it going to be love or fear? Is it going to create clarity or chaos? Peace or is it going to create anger, violence, and hatred? Because when you start looking at it this way, that will tell you whether it's of ego or spirit. Despite all the talking points spewed at us regarding fact checking and misinformation, governments and the mainstream news media are the biggest spreaders of misinformation by far. So don't buy into their egotism. You'll be healthier, you'll be happier by limiting your exposure to it. If there's an issue that you're interested in, or something that you truly find important, then carefully listen to both sides and do your own research. Verify what they're telling you. The thing is that the lies are so rampant that this is the only way that you cannot be brainwashed. When you start doing this, you're going to notice something. You're going to be amazed at how often you've been sucked into ego. And again, what what are the things that are indicative of ego? Things like fear, chaos, anger, violence, hatred. What are things of spirit? Love, clarity, peace. Very easy to make these determinations. And so, if anything that you're being told by anyone, uh, you know, you can tell real quickly where it's going to lead. Verify what they're saying too. People say a lot of things. It doesn't make it so. They make up all kinds of stuff constantly. So don't just believe anything, you know, believe nothing until you verify it for yourself. And then watch what happens. You start going through this process and just trust me, you're going to be amazed at how much of it is ego based and how often you've been sucked into ego paying attention to it. And then you suffer. And then you project that onto the world and add to the suffering. You see how this works? So the world consciousness is very much ego based. Let's see what we got here. I'm missing some stuff. And it says, even observing makes us rise in consciousness. It does because then you're paying attention. You're not just accepting something and like kind of like a knee jerk reaction before you've even determined. Yeah, that's another thing about the ego is that there's just this quick response. You hear something, you see something, and there's an immediate response, especially if it's a negative one. That is ego, and it has nothing to do with truth. It has everything to do with programs and memories, and they're being triggered by something that you've seen or heard. And that person then becomes the target of trauma that you're holding inside because somehow they reminded you of it. So even just observation, you rise in consciousness. That's a good point. It also says clarity at a clear lens is obviously important. Media is corrupt, and they are. Hi, Betsy. Very much so. And Betsy says, "Ego, moy." Ego, yes, ego. The viewpoint that um you have to operate in a physical world of time and space. You must be able to differentiate distance and time. If you were not able to do that, you wouldn't be able to cook a meal. You wouldn't be able to communicate with people. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We're in physical bodies. The illusion is that we're in physical bodies in a physical universe. Actually, that's not true either. But that's a whole other lie. But the appearances, what we sense with the senses that we have in a physical body, temporary as it may be, is that we live in a physical universe of time and space. So we have to be able to navigate that time and space. That's what the viewpoint of the ego is. That's not the problem. The problem is that as we descended into matter, we started believing that it was just not a tool to help us navigate time and space, but that we were it. That's what I mean when I say identifying with the ego. We started believing that the ego and ourselves were one and the same. Our memories, our thoughts, our emotions are who we are. Our feelings are who we are. None of that's true. They're what we have, they're not who we are. And so you can live in a physical universe as an enlightened being, but it requires you to operate from a spiritual perspective. So you use the ego as a tool. You do not become a tool of the ego. You understand what you're seeing, and that you're operating in time and space, but it's done from a perspective of who you are. You become a bridge or a doorway for spirit to flow through you into this world. And so that then becomes what you project. Unconditional love, as opposed to identification with the ego, where it's all about negative emotions and fear and guilt and shame and grief and all this stuff. That's all of the ego. Spirit doesn't know any of that. It's spirit is non-physical. There's no body. There's no emotions. Really, no thoughts as we would think of them. So it's just spirit is what it is. And when you remove all that negative stuff, what you're left with is something that you could only really describe as God or unconditional love. Because if you remove everything else, that's all that's left. So, yeah, ego. And that's a big one to grasp. And that's what I mean. The predominant world consciousness is ego based. We've been brainwashed into believing that it's reality, that it's what we are, it's just the way things are, it's the way the world works. And the reason that the world has the problems that it has is because we believe in them. That's why. So we project that onto the world. We're actually creating this situation. So in the beginning, when I was talking about, people, why does God allow this? Why does God allow this? God didn't allow any of this. It has nothing to do with higher consciousness. It's us projecting, if you will, a denial of God onto the world. All the negativity that exists in the world is us denying God. All the evil that exists in the world is us denying God, us denying higher realities, higher truths, the truth that we're all just one spirit. Even though quantum physics is starting to prove this, we still deny it. And it's in that denial and in that separation that we then make possible all of the problems that we have. Yeah, this ego stuff is huge. Kim says, "Isn't there three sides to all opinions? Yours, mine, and the truth in the middle." I don't know where I heard that. Yeah, there's variations on that, and there's some truth to that. But all opinions are ego based. The truth is just what it is. And a lot of people like to say, "Oh, well, the truth is relative." No, it's not. Opinions are relative. The truth is what it is. And by that, I mean that the truth is something that can never be proven wrong. It doesn't matter if you apply mathematics to it, or physics to it, or chemistry to it, or biology to it, psychology to it, your own personal experience to it. No matter what you apply to it, logic, you can't prove it wrong. It's something that never changes. It always is what it is. And what did I just say a few minutes ago? Spirit is what it is. The thinking is a function of the brain, an organ within a physical body. That's not spiritual knowledge. That's opinion. And it's very much subject to misinterpretation, to put it politely. But that's, not the way the world rolls, is it? Most people think that higher consciousness is a really smart person. No, intelligence has nothing to do with it. Intelligence is thinking. In fact, I would say that really intelligent people sometimes have a harder problem with spirituality because they're smart and they know that they're smart, and so they're very much identified with their thoughts. That actually creates spiritual blocks. Thinking gets in the way of accessing spiritual knowledge. Opinions get in the way because you're basically arguing with God, you're arguing with higher consciousness, you're arguing with truth. Yeah, but I think it should be, no, 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 no. That's all ego. That's all ego. All of it. Lies, deceptions, hate, fears, ego. Exactly. Exactly. How long does it take to get ingrained? Kim's asking. Well, not really that long, but I'll say this, that most of it is very much ingrained, and it's been going on for thousands of years. 5,000 years that archaeologists will cop to. 10, 15,000 years that some archaeologists will cop to. There's others that say that there's civilizations that are much older than that. But as long as there's been people, there's been these belief systems, these programs, that have been passed down from generation to generation. And so it's at this point, it's It's almost ingrained at the DNA level. I mean, there's actually cell memory of this stuff. So it's very much ingrained. And, that perhaps is over, I don't know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years. But something can become ingrained pretty quickly. I mean, especially if it's a really traumatic event, you can be traumatized in a second and it's ingrained in your subconscious. And you will act differently going forward until you heal that. And it's not, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's very difficult. You know, if you were brutalized in some way, take something really simple. Let's just forget about all the, I was abused as a child and all this stuff. Just take something really simple. You're an adult. You've loved animals all your life, especially dogs. You're just crazy about dogs. There's not a bad dog in the world. You've always got along with dogs. You've always got along with dogs that people aren't supposed to get along with. And people always tell you, man, my dog doesn't like anybody, but he really likes you, you know. And then one day you meet a dog and you put your hand out to say hello and it bites you viciously, rips your skin, you're bleeding, you start to go a little bit into shock. And in that instant, it's not that you don't love dogs anymore, but now there's fear. You've been traumatized. And in the future, you're not quite so fast to put your hand out to a dog you don't know. That trust has been lost. Now look at the way people interact with each other. I mean, as kids, we pick on each other. You get a little bit older, you're dating, you break up with each other. You get married, there's adultery. I'm just look at the stuff that goes on. And then there's just TV show after TV show after TV show of people that'll knock off their spouse for some insurance money or to be with somebody else. I mean, yeah, this stuff gets real deep real fast. It's a mess. It's a royal mess. And it's why, the problems exist in the world that they do because we've bought into all of it and we've accepted it as reality and we project it and we pass it on to our offspring and then they project it. So Kim, did you take care of that? um well, wouldn't the ego be what it is then too? um it, the ego is just a viewpoint, that's all it is, and it's not a problem, but we make it a problem by identifying with it. Like I say, if we use it as a tool, you know, I need to cook my dinner, so I've got to grab this pan over here and go get water over there, and I've got to time this, about this much and have about this much flame, and my taste buds. I'm going to put these spices in there. If we do all that, but we realize, you know what, it's just I'm a spiritual being. I'm temporarily in a physical body, and I'm just partaking in food because I don't get that in the spiritual world. It's only available here in the physical world, so I'm going to enjoy some. But we understand the reality of the situation. You know, it's completely different um, when it's done from a spiritual perspective like that. You can even bless your food, that you eat, the nourishment. It's a miracle that, there's this stuff that grows like it does, and we can prepare it like we do, and we eat it, and it tastes so good, and it nourishes these physical bodies. It's all miracles. So you see it that way. And it's just a different perspective. But when you buy into that, you know, this career that I have is who I am, or the roles that I play in life are who I am. I'm dad, I'm husband, I'm whatever. No, those are roles that you play. Those are functions that you serve while you're playing the game of life. But you're a spiritual being, temporarily here. And when you keep that perspective, it changes everything, especially when you understand that there's only one spirit. and we're all part of it. Even though in the physical world, see, this is the problem with the ego. We descend into matter, and the next thing we know, we're identifying with the ego and we're identifying with the physical world. And we think this is reality. And we think this body is who we are. And we think this mind is who we are. And we think this personality is who we are. And none of that's true. None of that's true. So, but the ego, it lends itself to that very easily. That's why you have to observe and be aware, because we need it to operate here. We need the viewpoint. But because the viewpoint is one that deals with separation, time and space are, even though they're illusions, and quantum physics proves this, to us, they seem real and they seem separate, as we do to each other. We seem like separate human beings. When we start buying into that reality is where the problem starts. I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but because we're no longer one spirit. Now there's me and you, and I want more money, and you have some, and I'm going to figure out a way to get it from you. And if I go down that path far enough, I might get really dark. See, here's the problem with it. That's why I say you have to be aware of this stuff. This whole point of this part of the discussion is being aware of ego, because once you start down that path, you can just go down into the abyss. It starts out sounding innocent enough. Oh, I'm just making a living, and then pretty soon, oh well, I could cheat a little here on this and cheat a little here on that and rip this person off, and it can get to the point to where you end up like these people on the TV show, where all of a sudden your wife, for $50,000 in life insurance, you're ready to knock her off, or her you. That's a very dark place to be. It's way down in the ego. Total identification. Serial killers are a very extreme example, but that's where this stuff leads. As opposed to, I'm a spiritual being. We're all the same being. We're playing different roles right now. We're playing this game. We're playing different roles in this game of life. But we're all the same being. Because if I saw you as myself, I'm not going to rip myself off or kill myself or hate myself, or you know what I mean? So it completely changes everything. That's the difference between spirit and ego. Where was I? Coherence with God, like essence, is what makes us superior consciousness. Yes, we're capable of much higher levels of consciousness. We can manifest, or I shouldn't say manifest. We that too, but we can express higher consciousness than other animals can. We can identify with and express. Our souls are basically rays of supreme consciousness, or streams of God flowing into this world, if you want to look at it that way. It's pretty high stuff, right? If we don't start believing in falsehoods and screw it all up, imagine what we'd be capable of. Think about that one for a minute. And it says, and people recreate what they've been programmed by those shows, movies, etc. Yeah, the media, your parents, you start learning this stuff when you're in the womb, long before you're born. Long before you're born, you are absorbing information about the world through the emotions of your mother and the chemicals that you share with your mother. You actually share, in a sense, her consciousness. You share what she's experiencing while you're in the womb, but you're also picking up on stuff on the outside world. This is preparing you for the world you're about to come into. So long before you even get here, you're already downloading stuff. And, up to about 6, 7 years old, children download stuff directly into the hard drive, no questions asked. They believe it like the gospel truth. They don't really have a conscience. They don't. That's why children have these rich fantasy lives, because they don't differentiate. Everything is reality to them. If they imagine that they have wings and they're flying around, in their mind, they're really flying around. As an adult, we go, "Oh, you can't do that. That's impossible." And so you see what starts happening? That's a program. That's a program. Asking if you missed something. Yeah, up above there was girl 69 XYZ, like hot photo, my sister, whatever. Get rid of that, please. Block them too. It's Kim says it's easy to get caught up on those roles. Very easy. They become your identity if you're not careful, but they're not who you are. They're just what you do. It's like the shirt you put on. You're not your shirt, but you're wearing one that looks like that. It's same stuff. Hi, Marshall. How you doing? Marshall, I'm sorry. Gratitude is the opposite of egotism. It is. Gratitude is like giving thanks. It's a very powerful thing, a very high level of consciousness. The giving thanks for the miracles, for the blessings. It's recognizing how miraculous all this is. That's a lot different than ego. Kim, do our egos develop at a certain age? Is it learned? We have it's a primitive part of the brain where the ego exists, but it doesn't really develop. About the same time when I say we start developing our conscious, 6, 7 years old is when it really starts. And depending on the person and their experiences, it can, some people have extremely big egos. Attitude of gratitude, that's it. A huge G on your hand, awesome. Anna says we must observe very clearly without judgment to be aware of what is really around us and what we really want to recreate, and with who. Yes. And see, that's one of the things about kids is before they learn all this stuff, they get all these opinions. They experience things in a way we don't. They experience things honestly. They're much better at presence than we are, being in the moment. They're not judging everything. They're just experiencing it. And that's really the way you want to live your life. That's something to learn from children. Spirit is free flowing energy. It's balanced too. But it's when it comes to experiencing things, it's just that. It's the experience. It's not judged. When you start judging everything and trying to make it this or that, or wish it was this or that, or happy because it's this, or sad because it's this, or anxious because it's this, or depressed because it's this, that's all ego stuff. Kids don't have any of that. They just they just experience life. Everything's great, because they don't have all those judgments. They're not carrying all that weight, all the baggage, and they're experiencing it the way it is, or closer to the way it is, I should say. Marshall, alpha thinking, hormonal imbalance totally changes your consciousness. Yes, it does. Very much so. So when you start recognizing what ego is, and you the more aware of it you become, the more you're going to realize what's really going on in the world. and where people are really at, and how much you've been brainwashed, and how often you get sucked into ego. When you've been conditioned all of your life to be a certain way, it's not all that easy just to, in a heartbeat, change it. Even if you're aware of all of this, it takes a lot of practice because you have to break those habits. You have to reprogram your subconscious. That takes a little bit of time. Again, the physical world, the fourth dimension, time. So, uh, be easy on yourself, but just be aware and just start doing these things and discerning. Okay, and that's an easy thing to remember. What fruit is this going to bear? Think about it in those terms. Is it love or is it hate? Is it for the greater good or is it for some special interest? And it doesn't much matter if the special interest is supposedly for a good reason. The special interest is still egotistical because it's still separating people into whatever. The only way you're ever going to get past that, the only way you're ever going to transcend ego, the only way you're going to really identify with spirit is to not have those judgments and opinions. You can live in the world. You can recognize that there's black people and there's white people. But once you get past the skin, there's just spiritual essence. The same spirit that's in you is in them. They're one and the same. There's no separation. That is an illusion. And the window dressing doesn't add up to much. Maybe it adds some spice to life. It's like putting on a different shirt. You look a little different, but does it really change who you are? Does it? Not at all. Yes. Hi, Christina. Yeah, and kids do. They'll and that's another, you'd be surprised how many nerves run from your gut to your brain. So that's why, oh, I got a gut feeling, or oh, I feel sick. There's a reason why. If something makes you feel sick, then you ought to pay attention to that. There's something not right about it. The energy is wonky. Spirit will never make you feel sick. Never. All right, so spend more time um, listening to those that project peace and love. You know, and then that's what you'll experience. It's not that you need to completely tune out and ignore all news, ignore everything that's going on in the world, be a hermit, never vote. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying don't buy into any of the egotism. You know, live your life for the greater good. Everything you do as an extension of that to bring about the greater good. Spirit flowing into this world. So the second thing is Marshall saying embarrassing humility definitely changed, shifted me to a spiritual path that I check myself regularly. Well, that'll do it. That'll do it. That and pain. Pain's a great motivator too. A lot of times people won't do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but they will if it's painful enough, to not do the right thing. So focus on inclusion. That's the second thing. And kind of ties into the whole greater good idea. So spirit is inclusive, whereas ego is separative. All judgments or opinions are therefore egotistical because they separate people into groups. Separation by any means, regardless of the stated reason, is egotistical. Spirit has no political affiliation, no race, no religion, no sex, no sexual orientation. If you focus on those differences, you'll get sucked into identification with ego. That's how judgments work. When you start judge lest not you be judged, the deeper meaning of that is that you get pulled into this primitive, low-level consciousness, which you can't be spiritually conscious and be judgmental and have opinions. They don't go hand in hand. Though judgments and opinions are of ego because they're separating spirit. They're denying spiritual truth. They're denying God. They're saying, no, there's these different groups of people, and those people are bad. Or, those people are going to hell. Or I don't like those people, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's when you start separating people, that you're making judgments. Those are opinions, and those are things of the ego. They will suck you into the ego, and you will find yourself identified with the ego. So it's best not to do that. Now, again, we live in a world where, there's different people that are into different things, that whatever. But when you start forming opinions or judging, instead of just, well, that's their path and this is mine, that's all. It doesn't need to go any further than that. Because if it does, then that's when it starts becoming a problem. So separation lends itself real quickly to special or otherwise unfair treatment. And then next comes control. Once you separate people into different groups, then it's all of a sudden, the certain groups are not going to get treated the same, or there's special treatment for whatever reason. And then the next thing that happens is control. There's nothing spiritual about the need to control others. That is the work of ego. The need to control is based in fear, one way or another. And that's a very low level consciousness. That if you don't understand anything else about ego, understand that it's fear. It is the primary emotion of ego is fear. The predominant emotional state of ego without spiritual influence. You can use your ego, but I'm saying without spiritual influence. It's going to drop down into fear. And then that control eventually will devolve into control through force, which is extreme egotism. And you see that all over the world. Watch as, study history and watch how as governments become, more and more and more centrally governing, and then socialism and then communism. You know that there's been more of their own people murdered than in all the wars that have been fought under communism. So that's the kind of stuff that it eventually leads to very dark places. Protecting the innocent is spirit in action. Controlling the innocent is oppression by out of control ego. And since one of the hallmarks of identification with ego is division, then the negative aspects of ego cannot exist without that division. Thoughts based on predatory gain cannot exist in a world of inclusion. They only exist when there's separation. For example, when there's me against you or us against them, then all evil becomes possible. Compassion and kindness, on the other hand, are qualities of spirit. So to avoid triggering your ego and the ego of others, treat them with compassion and kindness in all circumstances. People often do inappropriate things. Sometimes people do evil things, but that doesn't mean that we have to be unkind. It doesn't mean we have to be weak either. But we can be kind and not condone hurtful behavior. How people behave creates their karma. How you respond creates yours. You see the difference? I think there's some comments going by. Okay, I saw that one. When you judge others, you also judge yourself. Both judgments are incorrect. That's right. There's the separation. So mean-spirited people don't really have a mean spirit. It's their ego. Exactly. We all have the same spirit, but isn't there a bad spirit from the fallen evil angel? Nope, that's ego too. That's ego too. And all evil is man. It's not some horned beast that, spirit is spirit. That's all it is. It's basically unconditional love. And it's all one spirit. In order for there to be bad spirits or something like this, there would have to be separation. But there isn't. Not really. Only in our minds. The part of the mind, that is ego. What if the judgment is support lies about the natural of truth, like what they are programming kids to be confused about when they were born naturally to be? Lies and deception is what is ego? Yes, always. And it's one. The mark of the beast is deception, which is like saying the hallmark of ego is deception. So anything deceptive is ego based. It has nothing to do with spirit. Spirit is just, for lack of better words, unconditional love. So anything that's not that is ego. Think of it that way. That makes it real clear, doesn't it? What people do creates their karma. How we respond creates ours. Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it is hard. A lot of this stuff is, and part of it is because it is difficult being in a physical body with these senses to balance all this. But a lot of it is just simply because we've been so conditioned, so brainwashed that it's contrary to everything we've ever known or believed about ourselves and about reality and about other people. It's a lot to adjust to. I'll read you a quote from Mother Teresa. I love this quote. She says that the greatest disease in the West today is not tuberculosis or leprosy. It is being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. We can cure physical diseases with medicine, but the only cure for loneliness, despair, and hopelessness is love. There are many in the world who are dying for a piece of bread, but there are many more dying for a little love. The poverty in the West is of a different kind of poverty. It is not only a poverty of loneliness, but also of spirituality. There's a hunger for love as there is a hunger for God. Very, very well put. That's Mother Teresa. So the third thing, the last thing that you can do is, and this is important, and in the times that are going to be coming, this is what you need to focus on. It's mostly what we do here anyway, but hold your spiritual center. You hear me say that all the time. But seeing separate entities is ego's viewpoint. When you say I, which I are you referring to? Because if you're referring to you as an entity separate from others, then you're speaking from the ego. Shocking, isn't it? How often do you say I, and which I are you referring to? Boom, you're right into your ego. So there's only one spirit. Spiritually speaking, we are all one. And oneness is what spiritual consciousness projects. And so, do you see why the world's views are egotistical? The current world reality is constructed on separateness, and the problems of mankind are the result. Since they stem from spiritual unconsciousness, the problems that is, they will only be solved by spiritual consciousness. And this requires a shift into spiritual consciousness. However, at this time, most people are completely identified with ego. Their focus is on things that divide us rather than inclusion. They're focused on hate rather than love. A very low level of consciousness based in predatory gain and fear. And as long as people project fear, a fear-based reality is going to continue. In fact, it's going to get worse. Desperate people do desperate things, and very desperate people do very desperate things. But there is a major shift coming. Mankind is entering the next step in our evolution, spiritual awakening. It will be the result of tribulation. Ancient scriptures from all over the world speak of a time coming of great suffering, followed by peace on earth. The coming of a Messiah, the second coming of Jesus Christ, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Spiritual consciousness will be the result, and our reality will reflect it. But we have to get there, and it's going to be a process, and it's going to be a messy process. That process has already started. The tribulations have begun. It's no longer something in the far off future. Tribulation has arrived. You're witnessing it firsthand. For all our sakes, it's critical that you hold your spiritual center. Constantly move into the light to avoid sucked into the darkness of identification with ego. Forgiveness is a constant attitude that's required rather than an occasional act, regardless of whatever egos are involved. You have to see through the ego to the light within. Ask for divine guidance. Ask spirit. How would you have me see this situation? What would you have me do? Ask the Great Spirit and be open to divine guidance. You have to also be open to it. Ask for it, but then be open to it. Otherwise, just give it up to Spirit. Say, I don't know. I don't understand. It's beyond my ability to do anything about it. And so I give it to you, Spirit. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What I'll tell you is that if you're sincere, Spirit will guide you. And if there's something that you're guided to do, then do it. That's called faith. Otherwise, give it to God and get out of the way. So there it is. There's that's egotism in world consciousness and 3 things you can do about it. All right, let's see if there's any last minute questions, and we'll do a quick healing circle and call it a night. Christina, love the words from Mother Teresa. Will you please post that on your wall? Yeah, sure. I will. That's a good idea. Let go and let God. There you go. All right, so let me get this up here real quick, and we'll do a healing circle. This one. Okay, so green tea, wet the whistle. All right, everybody gather around, form a circle, join hands, gently close your eyes and mouths. Yeah, gently close your eyes and mouths, breathing through the nose down to an area just below your belly button, and then exhale back out through the nose. Again, nice deep breath, breathe in the peace, and exhale all tension. Again, breathe in peace, and exhale all troublesome thoughts, all stress, all disease. Inhale peace, and exhale everything that is not peace. Okay, continue breathing on your own. Settle into the relaxation and let the physical world go for a while. Let the healing energy build and flow. Just let it happen. Move deep into your body. Consciously explore your body and its energy field. Now move deep into your mind and explore your mind and its energy field. Now move deep into your energy field on a soul level. That behind the body, behind the mind. That's which animates it. That which is manifesting as the mind body. Explore that energy field. Now it's on a soul level. Now trace that energy back to spiritual source. Where's that energy coming from? Just let your consciousness drift backwards from the body to the mind to the soul and back to the source of the soul. And now remain connected to spiritual source while allowing your energy field to expand into your mind body, the healing circle, and then into the collective consciousness of mankind. Allow spirit to flow through you into the collective consciousness so that you bridge spirit and mankind's collective consciousness. Bridge the light, be the light, and fill the collective consciousness with light. Again, bridge the light, be the light, and then fill collective consciousness with light. And one more time, bridge the light, be the light, and fill collective consciousness with light. And so it is. All right, that's it for tonight. You can slowly open your eyes unless there's some last minute questions. And I'll make a note here to put that Mother Teresa quote on the page. Probably tomorrow you'll see it post. I have to make it up. I might just do a simple post, but I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, Christina, it'll be available on Facebook. Usually, even on YouTube, it's available right away. Sometimes it takes them a day or two. And on YouTube, if you go to that channel and you click on the live, you'll see all of them that are in there. It only shows a couple of them, and I haven't went in there and organized it yet. I'm just getting started with that kind of stuff. You're welcome, Susan. Thank you. Kim reminding everybody to drink a full glass of water. Thank you, Marshall. Hey, Richard, how's it going? Richard says, see through the ego to see the light within. In other words, constant forgiveness. Indeed. Welcome, Christina and Anna. All right, everybody. Oh, let me get rid of this one. There we go. I honor the God within you. And remember, until the next time, the only way to bring about the greater good is to be the greater good. Good night.